Hi, everyone, and welcome to the penultimate episode of the Brockton Bay Chronicles. My name's Keith. Thanks for being here as my friend and co-host Andy concludes his first-time reading of Worm by Wildbow. Well, Andy, this is it, dude. You ready to put a bow on this thing?
Yes and no. It's tough to be at the end of this road, but yeah, the big fight is over, we think. So yeah, this is just tying up the loose ends, and I think this will be a great episode. As far as other things going on, Tony, welcome back for yet another episode. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
And we will be reviewing the epilogue, Teneral. Hope I pronounced that right. Or maybe I should just say Eternal. As far as new business, in our final episode, we'll be doing a roundtable discussion that features Tony and Daniel Radford. And we'll have details posted on the community page. And we'll follow up with questions and comments on that next episode.
That's correct. We're looking forward to having Tony and Daniel back discussing things as we wrap this thing up, seeing what kind of interesting conversation we can have amongst the four of us. Should be a lot of fun. So we hope everyone will join us for that. And with that out of the way, we're going to start our review one last time, starting off the epilogue, chapter 1. And yay, Andy, lots of cheers. We find out that possibly the greatest therapist on Earth Bet, Jessica Yamada, has survived, and we find her in a conversation in a session with Sierra, formerly known as Glastic-Gwynye, the Fairy Queen. She's trying to give her some of her expertise in counseling and helping Sierra find out who she is post Gold Morning.
Yeah, this is a wonderful reward for Dr. Yamada. Hey, great, you survived. Now step in the ring with the former fairy queen. Just like, man, I don't know. This lady's got ice water in her veins or something.
Mm-hmm.
She rolls through this pretty good, given how challenging it is.
Yeah, Tony, there was some pretty serious verbal jousting going on here.
Yeah. Sierra has threatened her at least a couple of times in the discussions, and Yamada remains professional, and I always find that admirable.
Yeah, I mean, we think back to the first time I believe it was we met Jessica when she was in the Parahumans facility, and she was trying to treat Sveta, yeah, inside the nice combat crash suit to try to keep her safe. But you had the risk of crushing death, and now you have her standing face to face with Sierra, who's going through an existential crisis and could have her snuffed out at any moment. And Jessica's holding her own. Really, really love this character. Glad to see that she got a somewhat proper send off here. Andy, what were your thoughts as Sierra struggled with this session and coming to try to? I guess the whole thing was helping her find her identity at this point, and can she fit into society? I guess.
Yeah, and you got to figure a lot of folks are going through this, but it's just orders of magnitude worse for the fairy queen. Ciara, has all these different things available. I tried to picture it, in terms of like a regular mafia kind of movie or something where the the person says, "All right, well, unload your weapons on the table," and Ciara just keeps pulling out new weapons, and Miss Yamada's like, "Oh, okay, I'll try not to get upset. That looks really bad." Um, but I think Miss Yamada really hits it on the head with the idea that Ciara probably triggered really young, and that basically halted her human maturity
Mhm.
path. So she's kind of stuck in adolescence, even though she's chronologically older. And people that are in that spot, depending on what they go through, really have a hard time. So I can't imagine how difficult it must be for Ciara with this.
Tony, let me ask you this. I try to, as I've said many times before, try to look a little deeper in the story, and I'm at this point in this chapter, and I'm asking myself, what was Glass-Steguine's shard? What was the purpose of it? I mean, okay, so she collects the dead, the dead shards. Which, okay, let me step back from that then. So the purpose of the entities was to go there, spread the shards, have conflict, blah, 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 get information, and then collect them after they destroy the world. Was that her shard, essentially?
Uh, that's probably good speculation. I actually don't know the answer for sure, but
Okay.
I lean closer to that type of line of reasoning.
Okay. And then, I mean, sticking with you a little bit there, Tone, what did you get out of this chapter with Jessica Yamada? More of the human side of Sierra and her trying to decide if she's even going to be a hero. The Chevalier extends this olive branch to her, and they want to bring her on board and make her a real member of, now I guess it's the Wardens. They're called. What was your take of this chapter?
Yeah, one of the big important questions in the chapter was why she didn't help Scion.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, a lot of ways to possibly, think about it. I'm actually really curious to hear what Andy thinks first before I um, throw in my 2 cents. But yeah, I would like to know how you look at her response to Yamada's question and what how you think that compares with Scion.
What do you think, Andy? Why didn't she help Scion?
Well, so as you were saying, the shards show up, they interact with whatever hosts they have available on the planet. They try to keep refining things there. Eventually, chaos and death and destruction ensues, and then the shards move on. And so my guess is that Ciara saw a flaw with the way Science Shard interacted with the host, the humans. And if that flaw hadn't been there, then I think she would have helped him and just wrapped it up and destroyed everything. But the fact that the whole idea is that they're trying to get better, right? They're trying to evolve or trying to continue to refine their species,
Mm-hmm.
for want of a better term. And she saw that, I think, she thought Scion was the evolutionary best way forward, but then it was shown to not be based on this interaction with the hosts. And so she didn't help him.
Hmm. Tony?
Okay. Yeah, no, I like that response. I I don't know. I think at least my initial take was something kind of similar. I think seeing the humanity in Cyan, because she touched on like watching how the humanity kind of entered this monster, an alien, and then
Mm-hmm.
that's ultimately what destroyed him. And I think seeing that possibly had her reconsidering her own position with like what we touched on before with being a child. She kind of chose to remain childlike in her appearance as well. And
Mm.
seeing how, perhaps she didn't really explore her own humanity fully to get past that stage herself, and seeing how everyone would and destroy someone who couldn't handle that. And and so yeah, by the end of it, you see her kind of change her appearance again to enter that adolescence, and
Yeah.
Yamada kind of touching on. that you're trying to find your identity at that point of your humanity. That exploration of now that you kind of learn to cope with things for the most part, now it's a matter of finding who you are and who you want to be going forward. And it's the same for her powers. There's the cycle is done. The entities are gone. So now it's like, okay, well, what do I actually use my powers for?
Right.
And that's ultimately what she explores, and she finds a new way to kind of use her powers. I think she teases at the end
Hmm.
of maybe another way of looking at how she brings back the dead.
She garners some information by using one of her spirits to eavesdrop on the conversation between Jessica and Chevalier. And Andy Chevalier's trying to suss out the situation. He's working under a time crunch. First of all, I love that Jessica is like, "Dude, I'm in session. You don't interrupt my session. What are you doing here?" And Chevalier's, "Hey, I need to make a decision." And it's kind of asking without asking. Is she good to go? Is she safe? Can we rely on her? And meanwhile, like I said, Sierra's eavesdropping.
Yeah, that's I mean, I get where Chevalier's coming from. They're in kind of a vacuum state now, so they need to come up with something. They're trying to give everybody who at least tried to stop Scion a chance at a fresh start.
Right.
And obviously, having somebody like the Fairy Queen on their side would be a wonderful thing to have if they could count on her. But yeah, the Fairy Queen, just like a kid trying to listen in on what the parents are going to buy them for Christmas. She's like, well, I can figure out what's going on here. I'll listen in. But Miss Yamada takes it in stride, and Sierra says, "All right, well, I'm whatever you decide's fine. I'll go with it."
Hmm. And she debuts herself as Valkyrie. And didn't she rename her spirits? I can't find a section. Warriors or something like that. I may be misremembering that. She and Legend and Chevalier meet with a bunch of the rest of the new members of the hero group. And there's some frank conversations going on up there, Andy, where some of the people are like, "Hey, are you guys forming a new triumvirate here, or are we totally washing away all the bad stuff?" And I think this is where Legend does give another one of his inspirational talks about sticking together and moving forward here.
Yeah, I think it was pretty well handled. I mean, obvious that people would have these concerns. That it's just yeah, rinse and repeat. And we're
Hmm.
going to end up with the same kind of problems we had before. But yeah, it seems like there's definitely an attempt to make to learn from their mistakes. And yeah, there's a paragraph in here. These spirits were her warriors,
There you
not
go.
mere shadows. So she seems to be thinking of it differently. But she's also having Valkyrie's having problems. She's still having trouble speaking the way she wants to speak without the kind of affectations.
Hmm.
She's having these visions, that were a big part of her power, and now they're just kind of, a big distraction from her trying to turn the page, so to speak.
Yeah.
But, Miss Militia reaches out and is trying to build a bridge with her. And
We'll see if that bears any kind of a good response, good result.
right. Yeah.
Tony, Riley and the Goblin King come to see Sierra. I'm sure nothing bad could happen from that interaction.
No bog. Yeah. I well, I mean, technically no, yeah. Like you would think that this would be very
Yeah.
very scary, but the chapter really touches on a lot of things like rebuilding second chances and finding new identities. Even the most heinous supervillains right now are kind of all talking about how they are, uncrowned and kind of
Hmm.
lost their prestiges. They're still trying, like, a king, is still a king without a crown, holding his head up high, but they've all kind of still been declawed in a sense. So yeah.
I'm not comfortable. I as the further we got into the chapter, I was like, okay, maybe she can pull it together here, maybe. And then, as Andy pointed out, she, Sierra's struggling, trying to uh, negotiate with her own shard, and then these two ne'er do wells show up. Maybe it's me.
No, I mean, your apprehension is understandable given the circumstances. But that's also the point. It's amnesty
Yeah.
given out to everybody means everyone, and
Hmm.
you just as much as the characters in the story might not accept that easily.
And you got anything else you want to add to this before we wrap up this chapter?
No, just the idea that Sierra and Valkyrie starts touching on how there are shards that have similarities,
Hmm.
and then she says they were all parts of a whole. And so, and then she starts thinking about, oh, maybe I could start bringing the dead back. And that's creepy. That's not
Yeah.
good.
Ooh, yeah, yeah. Stay tuned for that, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
What could possibly go wrong there?
Well, I
Uh,
mean, maybe it's nothing wrong. Maybe it's something great.
you would think that way. Hmm.
Wow,
Yeah.
what's that supposed to mean?
Oh goodness. Nothing at all, Bubba. All right,
Wow,
let's
wow.
You just come across sometimes Tony is the guy when he's watching the movie really hopes the guy clips the wrong wire on the bomb.
I mean, it'd be real funny if you cut the wrong
No, I didn't raise this guy, Tony or Andy. I don't know. I didn't help raise him. I don't know why he's thinking this way, but okay. All right, fellas, let's move on to chapter 2. Okay. I think it's fair to say that we can all agree that Nero's a punk, and nobody's going to be sad that Imp and the Heartbroken descended on him and gave him his comeuppance. Are we all in agreement with that?
Agreed.
Tony?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, I did like this. The world has ended. The old world is ended, and or well, I can't say that. It's survived by the skin of its teeth, and you are going to have, nature abhors a vacuum. So while the heroes are trying to get themselves back together, you're going to have people like this Nero guy, these creeps trying to creep into areas and set up their own little fiefdoms, and this guy just turns out to be a really bad dude. What did you think of this introduction, Andy?
Well, I'd like to paint him as just horrible,
Mm-hmm.
and there's definitely plenty plenty of ammunition there for that. But they are facing this horrible winter. They are trying to get by and make a go of it. He does describe other settlements or enclaves that are in worse shape, where people are, scratching just to barely stay alive. But it's obvious that he is the one that's benefiting by far compared to anybody else, and isn't above using his powers to get what he wants. And even though he's rationalizing by saying, "Oh, I'm helping everybody," and then of course somebody points out that there's a lot of hypocrisy in the way Nero is handling it, and then Nero kind of shows he really is a total punk.
Yeah, he is a scumbag there. Tony, I found it really cool that I think we see some growth from Imp in here and in the final chapter here, where Imp is she's reacting to Nero trying to use Taylor's shtick, so to speak. And it's like, no, my friend did it better, and you're not going to come in here and try to be a cheap imitation of that. Am I seeing that right?
Yeah. It's legacy is a
Mm,
big thing that she throws around a lot in this chapter about
yeah,
preserving the legacies of the people she's lost and cares about. And I love Imp in this chapter so much
yeah.
because like yeah, like you see a lot of her growth. Like when she's trying to use a lot of new words, can mix a few, malapropisms, like
Yeah. And she
confusing some
was
terms and but
she was snapping her power back and forth to like reset the conversation to get her villain monologue just right, wasn't she?
yeah, yeah.
I thought that was pretty funny. I thought
Yeah,
that was
it's hilarious. And but that's like what's so cool is like yeah, like someone like her, she was really young, obviously didn't have like a formal education. And so
hmm
she's having to learn all of these things on her own. And so it's like, yeah, like it's a gag to make these kind of mistakes, but it's also really cool that she's like taking it so seriously with trying to get to like not only like learn and improve her vocabulary, but like she's basically trying to understand and emulate
hmm
Taylor more because Taylor read all the time. Like so she's
Oh.
trying to be more intellect. She's trying to be more like her and like kind of in honor of her. And then also more like Alec in honor of him being a more witty and having these really nice,
hmm
clapbacks and insults and stuff like that. Like she really is, I think, genuinely wanting to preserve their legacy and and
Andy,
spirit.
I hadn't made that comparison of Imp trying to honor Taylor in that way. Do you see that as well?
Now that Tony mentions it, yeah, I do. And it makes sense, right? Imp
hmm
is like the ultimate little sister. You
Sure.
know, definitely a pain in the butt most of the time, but they the younger sibling sees what the older one is doing and there's parts of it that they like. And so they end up copying, and oftentimes as an older sibling, you're like, don't do what I'm doing. That's my thing. But, the younger sibling sees that that's a good thing. And so, yeah, yeah, I totally get it now that Tony brought it up.
You think back to our first introduction to Aisha, all those arcs ago, near the beginning of the story. I almost would have attributed to her to being a throwaway character, and now it's at the point where I can't imagine the story concluding without her. You know,
Right. Yeah, she's definitely become integrated. And I'm guessing that in Ward, that's going to even expand further.
were you impressed with how? Well, first of all, I think Wildbow does a really good job of setting up the heartbroken and giving you a certain unsettled, showing you how unsettled it would be to be around them, and yet Imp seems to have a handle on them. You agree with those two assessments, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, Imp started off with Alec, and so being around Regent gave her a lot of insight into, I think, how the powers of the heartbroken work. And she's got, these trump cards to kind of deal with it in some ways. And so I think that helps. And I think the same thing, the way Imp is honoring Gru and Taylor, I think the heartbroken have a certain, not hero worship, but they put Regent on a pedestal as well, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think their Imp gets some benefit from that. She gets some respect because they're like, wow, she hung out with Big Brother. That's pretty cool. But I see a lot of danger there. These people, this heartbroken crew grew up in a really messed up home,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. And just like we were talking about with Ciara, we don't know how stunted their maturity might be.
Right.
And if something goes sideways with them, how they might all band together and try to come up with a way to flip on Imp,
Just
or
break free if they decide they've had enough of her and just be like, you know
or
what?
just somehow corrupt her, or
Oh,
mess with her so much that they take over and she's part of their crew.
mm, wow, interesting idea there. So it turns out this Nero guy, Nero, not Nemo. Let's be sure about that.
That was pretty funny. Yeah,
Yeah,
I got a
yeah,
kick out of
it
that.
was. Yeah, it was. So Tony Nero is one of I guess we call him one of teachers acolytes, so to speak, and he's trying
Yeah,
to help.
thralls. Yeah.
Yeah, teachers got some kind of plan going, and this chapter is where we just get a little bit of a taste of it, a cursory view. We get more in depth later on, but he's got some kind of support from teacher, and I guess we can say that Imp and the Heartbroken effectively put a stop to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, teacher this is the first I guess instance where we start to see more beats of teachers' influence
Hmm.
in the reconstruction of civilizations and all the Earths. And yeah, then the fact that once teacher's name was brought up, it made so much sense with like
Right.
how it's like, oh, that's why no wonder it's like Taylor's about like t teacher
Hmm.
likes to borrow tactics
Hmm.
from a lot of people. So
All right, now I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here. So after Imp and the Heartbroken deal with Nero, and we get the whole "I'm a little teapot" thing going on there, which that's just wow. Please don't get on their bad
there's
side.
more there's more to the
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna want to mess with the Heartbroken. So, but anyway, Tony, I wanted to ask you here, and we can double back on some of the paragraphs in this chapter, but is Shadowstalker, is she the biggest loser in this story? Now, like I said, we're leaping ahead to where Imp goes up and talks to Shadowstalker, and in their conversation, Imp clearly has the upper hand here. She's coming across as the more mature, the more thoughtful one, and Shadowstalker just seems to be pouting. I beat Hebert. I'm here, and she's dead, and yeah, blah blah blah, or whatever. What do you think, Tone?
Oh, I mean, yeah, Imp definitely um, verbally dumpstered Shadowstalker pretty
Yeah.
hard. Like she lost that discussion like 100-0. So like there's not really much that she really had to say there.
Hmm.
Like she's nothing she could, and even if she could, Imp's just like see ya, like I was
Yeah.
never here anyway. So
Hmm.
like yeah, she just took nothing but L's, and no one. And it's kind of ironic that like the only people who really know how hard of an L she took was us.
That's true.
Kind of an Imp fashion. No one else will remember this.
Hmm. So, Andy, are we happy to see Shadowstalker at this moment? The worlds are being reborn, so to speak. Imp has her new crew, and she's looking forward. Meanwhile, Shadowstalker is just stewing.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm happy about it. It's almost more just kind of
Pity?
pathetic. Yeah,
Pathetic.
pity.
Hmm.
You know, I'm trying to, when we go through the stuff with the Valkyrie, the Fairy Queen, she's always got these extra names, or the names she gave to folks, or the name she knew of the shards.
Hmm.
So I'm starting to try to, put that kind of thing into my mind, and I'm thinking of Shadowstalker as like a chihuahua. It's just the little annoying alarm kind of maybe attack dog, but not enough to really do anything on their own. And if you needed to, you could, kind of just punt them out of the yard. So I know that's horrible, and I apologize to anybody who's a big fan of Chihuahuas, but it's it just I feel bad. She's just such a small fish, and she's trying to swim with these whales, and they just keep sucking her in and spitting her back out again. She's still here. There's something to be said for that, but
Right.
it's just she's just not a force at any level, really.
Yeah, and to wind this up, I find myself wondering if she's at least stunted as far as growth wise it goes in this whole story.
Hmm.
I wonder. Huh.
Yeah, yeah, I could
Yeah.
see that. I mean, oh, go ahead, Tony.
I was just gonna say, like, the difference with her and why I think by and large, most readers don't like her, right?
Uh-huh.
Similar to like how you have certain characters, like you have the villains, and some people, will still like the villains because they make these great points. But then there's always that character that you just like don't like. People will talk about
Mm,
like that teacher in Harry Potter. I think I forgot her name, and like there's just like certain characters that just rub you the wrong way because
Mm.
of
sure.
how they just kind of treat people. And
Hmm.
it's like, oh, this isn't due to like trauma or anything like that. She's just a jerk, and so you have all of these characters, super villains and like murderers that we can kind of empathize with, like with trying to get better, get past their trauma because they're trying. And Sophia's not. Sophia
Yeah.
is just kind of staying in that same mental prison where it's just like, oh, I just gotta be one up on everybody who wronged me. I was out here looking for revenge, and like after the world nearly ended, just because you're
Hmm.
the only ones who know they saw me weak, and that matters so much to me. Like given everything that happened, like her perspective never changed,
Yeah.
and that's really pathetic. Like Andy said, it's really
Yeah. I
pathetic.
I think that's the word we hang around Shadow Stalker. Yeah. So the chapter ends with Imp joining the rest of the kids. Has one of them, was it Samuel? She has hopping the driver's seat while she reads and works on her sophisticated supervillain persona. And I think the book she was reading was it 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And yeah, she and the kids head off in their four wheel drive on down the road. Anything else to add to this one, Andy, as we tie it up?
No, no, that sounds good. Although I'm guessing that, this is just happening on all sorts of different parallel worlds all over the place. And yeah, they're off to see who they can mess up next and screw up somebody else's plans.
Yeah. So let's move on to chapter 3. Now, Andy, you being the computer guy, I bet you were all about this one.
Oh yeah, I love this chapter. This was right up my alley. This is so cool. Set a thief to catch a thief, basically. It's
Hmm.
this was really neat. I think this was excellently written.
Yeah. It starts off with Dragon and Defiant, and he's in his vehicle outside this little community, and he's working on something, and we get their interaction. Um, they decide he's not taking care of himself. Tony somehow or other, Defiant can't find the 6 minutes he needs every night to sleep, but he's he's working on something pretty important. He's working on Pandora. Tone. Wow, this was pretty intense. I thought.
Yeah, there's a lot of it felt like they created a lot of potential stakes with it, right? Like, oh, this not only will this potentially destroy Defiant, it could destroy the woman he loves.
Hmm.
Doesn't know basically anything that could happen, and on top of what they're trying to deal with, that aspect of what Teacher and Saint set in place is also not even guaranteed to fix anything. So there's a lot of tension
Yeah,
building up with
seriously,
it.
seriously, screw those guys. I mean, both of them, the Saint and Teacher. I mean, here, Andy, this chapter really shows the humanity of Dragon. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and the humanity of Defiant. He obviously started off as a very ambitious, self-serving
Yeah.
knucklehead, and as his body has become less human, it seems like his heart and spirit have become more human. He's more empathetic. He's loving, which you never would have believed from Arms Master.
No.
And he he's willing to, yeah, as Tony said, put everything on the line to try to get past the junk, the fetters, the messed up stuff that teacher and saint put in place.
So just to help me, you guys help me make sure I understand this. So he had the backup, Pandora, which was probably even from the first time backed up before he even began helping her try to unshackle Richter's original
Hmm.
safeguards. I'm guessing that's me. And then you have Dragon, this more mature version of herself, who's in love with Colin and has this cancer, as she's put it, in her code. And he turns Pandora loose on Dragon to let them fight this out. Is that too simple of an explanation? Andy, let me start with you.
Maybe a little bit. It's oh. So when you're writing software and you have to, oftentimes if it's a big enough piece of software, you can't just be in the middle of it changing it.
Mm-hmm.
You do what's called a branch, so like that backup idea, and then you work in the branch. The problem is if you're in a big enough company, lots of people are making branches. The main software continues to get built on. And then at some point, you have to merge your branch back in, and there's conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to resolve those conflicts. So what we're having here is multiple levels higher than that, but basically this giant merge conflict where you're saying, all right, I recognize that I could choose between this routine or this subroutine, and which one is better. One of them is locked down in such a way that it can't function fully. The other one is fully functional, but has doesn't have as much, hasn't evolved as much. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, are we going to revert the code back to an earlier state to bypass a bug that's been introduced or a virus?
Yeah.
The difference is, though, like you said and pointed out in the way you phrased it, you have actual awareness here. So it's not just that, it's just bits that are competing
Mm-hmm.
and someone is arbitrating. It's two self-aware pieces that are having to try to say, all right, which one should go? And, thank goodness for logic. And
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
No, 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 no. I was going to move on to Tony. Finish your point. Go ahead.
Well, if this had been, you know, two irrational human type fully or not logical enough, there would have been a lot more, and it might have been just the nuclear option. Nobody wins,
Mm-hmm.
and you just end up with a pile of slag, and these poor people with their tarpons or whatever end up starving in the winter. But luckily, logic wins out, and they try to come up with a solution rather than just take each other out.
So, Tony, this was the best. This was something I don't think Defiant even hoped for this result, right? In that Dragon gets free. She frees herself from Richter's original code and from the cancer that teacher put in, and yet she retains these 2 years worth of memories. She's a whole quote unquote person, and she's free. And Defiant, I don't think in the writing here we get the impression he even hoped for something this good to happen.
Yeah, that was basically the best case scenario happened. So they were extremely fortunate, and also well put, Andy, with your explanation. That was a really good way to explain what was going on between the two. I was going to make like a analogy to like WandaVision, where like basically you have the two visions, right? So if
Mm.
you have a vision that is the base, yeah, like you said, the base code, then you have the version of Vision that was with Wanda the entire time, and then you have the two eventually having to basically fight each other to say who's going to be the real Vision here.
Mm-hmm.
um and yeah, but instead of splitting off or mutual or destruction of one or the other. You actually have Dragon being able to return free and still able to love and maintain that love with Colin.
Yeah. So it's 30 plus years later, Andy, and this isn't exactly Fortran, but once again, you're helping me understand computer code. Thanks there, bro.
Glad to do it. Yeah, what the thing that's probably helped me out most of my career is being able to explain things to people who aren't in,
Mhm.
knee deep in the code like I am. So, uh, yeah, glad I came in handy.
Yeah.
Do you have to talk to product managers a lot, I'm guessing?
Yes, yeah, yeah, and I regularly get told, "Wow, that was a great analogy. That really helped me understand it." I'm like, "Yeah, that's kind of my superpower, I guess. I don't know if that's one of the shards or not, but
That could be, man. Did you have
Then you get a real bad product manager that makes you second trigger.
Yeah. 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 There you go. All right, moving into to chapter 4. Boy, did I really love this chapter. I mean, we've come a long way from this rough person I could hardly stand, who I was cheering when Taylor kicked in the teeth, to where now I'm this fascinating character who has survived the end of the world and is trying to grow in her own way, understanding her own emotional limits and trying to find ways to work around them. This was a really good chapter, Andy. What do you say?
oh, I fully agree. Yeah, this is Rachel, and we've touched on a little bit with Imp as well, but Rachel also is trying to honor the memory of Taylor.
Yeah.
She's saying, "All right, I I hate people basically, or they're all knuckleheads, except for this one,
Hmm.
and if there was one, maybe there are more, and maybe I shouldn't be quite as quick to throw everybody in the tank, and so she's continually trying to. She's got that introspection, trying to see where am I coming from on this. Is this legit? And giving people a chance. I
Talk to
mean,
them like they're puppets.
Yeah. Right. It worked. Yeah.
but even with Biter,
Hmm.
Biter is like I figured Biter, if this had happened earlier, yeah, Biter would be toast.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
You want to
No.
leave? Leave now. You know what? Just you're gonna be a Scooby snack. That's it. All right,
Yeah.
bastard, go
Take
for it.
off.
You chew him up. And yet she's here trying to kind of think it through and trying to, all right, well, I don't get it, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. what
Right.
what am I missing, and so yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, Tony, I exactly that, to Andy's point there, piggyback on it. Yeah, she's trying to look deeper. She understands that she has limits. She knows that Taylor would get it, but this thing with Biter, well, first of all, Andy's right. 20 arcs ago, Biter would have been, bitten in half and dispensed with. But forgive me for jumping back and forth, Tone. But the start of this chapter was so cool because you see that Biter has the freedom to try to clap, not clap back, but to speak up a little bit more to Rachel. Cassie has her own role to play early on. We're talking about the section right before the bad trigger happens. I really enjoyed this, Tone. What did you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's a pretty common sentiment. A lot of people really do love Rachel by the end because yeah, her character development was not only really unique, but it was just really fun and
Hmm.
cool through the story. And this is a great way to kind of show that and send that off at the end of the story.
Tony, what's going on with these broken triggers? Shards are jumping between people. We're having trigger visions from what appears to be Scion's POV. What in the wide world of sports is going on here, kid?
Well, I don't know how much you want me to explain this.
Okay. This Does this lead on into Ward? Is this like a big
Uh,
setup?
I don't know, man.
Okay. All right.
I'm just kidding. Well, I mean, what I can tell you is that yeah, they are broken triggers. But something you might be able to infer is that well, you know that Scion and the other entity were ones that were calibrating the shards, right?
Right.
And so now you have situations where what happens when there's no calibration process?
Right, because we were shown during their arc that the entities, as you said, calibrate the shards to prevent them from harming their host. That was something that they learned to do. And now
Mhm.
both of those beings are gone. Scion wiped out the body of his companion. They destroyed his body, right? I mean, and now the shards are just what, free to propagate willy nilly?
Yeah, the shards, some shards may not calibrate to protect the host. And so that's what we're seeing is these shards running rampant, also not even distinguishing between the people who are triggering and not triggering, and yeah, causing a lot of issues.
Well, that's awful, Andy, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm going to touch on that later, but yeah, I think this is the worst of both worlds.
Another. I think this was what the last fight of the story. No, we get to Lung in a little bit, but yeah, this black ooze man, as she was calling him, and looks like I don't know. I want to say a petroleum based cape, and his body's falling apart and he's in agony, and yet he's fighting these capes, and Rachel goes to help. She and her cadre, Cassie and Bida, they're actually on a child custody, trying to solve a child custody issue there, Andy, and not something we would have expected from bitch a while ago.
Definitely not. Yeah, and we find out later that Wildbow helps it make sense. That
Yes,
it's just part of Rachel's pack, and she's going to protect her pack,
of
and
course.
so that makes sense. But yeah, wow, what a thing to step in the middle of that mission.
Yeah, I mean, they were just off trying to find a kid, and the next thing you know, they're helping fight this thing. And then after they defeat it, as Miss Militia notes, as she was talking to one of her fellow capes there, one of her heroes, the thing jumped to another person and commenced to destroy that lady's body. And Rachel and Bastard helped take her down in time. So this is where they discuss, yeah, something's going on with this. I forget the numbers, Tony. There was like 25% of the recent natural triggers were going haywire, and so
Yeah. It was
I'm
like
with
yeah, one in two. I think it was like 1 in 5 or something like
mm,
that. Yeah.
hmm so I'm gonna guess along with Andy that portends something awful for the future. Skipping ahead, Andy, Miss Militia joins Rachel at the up on the hill at the place that she has set aside for this memorial on this world for Taylor and her dogs. And I love these two characters, and I'm glad that they got some good time together to discuss the future.
Yeah, and Miss Militia might even have some insight into Rachel just because of how she came about as well.
Mm-hmm.
She went through a horrible trauma, had all sorts of reasons to think everybody else sucked, and found ways of trying to deal with that. And so I think that does give her a little bit more of a connection with Rachel. Um,
She could kind of reach out to Rachel in a way successfully, kind of like Taylor did because of her
e-
own experiences.
exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And because of Taylor, Rachel is more open to people trying to understand her, trying to connect with her, not thinking that they're just trying to manipulate her.
hmm Yeah, and she's still not afraid to say if you are trying to manipulate me, I'm going to have bastard bite you and spit you out.
Well,
So,
yeah, she's not going to turn into, Miss Manners overnight, I mean, she's
Tony, were you satisfied with this conclusion where these characters have come and reached this détente? And does it seem real for these two characters?
Yeah, Rachel eventually saying like, "Oh, I don't trust anybody," but then
Hmm.
after the conversation with Miss Militia, eventually saying, "Yeah, sure, like,
Yeah,
like, yeah, like, hey, as long as you say that you're not gonna get in my way, I won't get in your way, that's that's a-okay with me,
it's a starting point. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a
it was
starting point.
a starting point. That was what was said. Yeah, yeah, it definitely was a big thing, right? Like
For sure.
a big step for Rachel and Miss Militia also doing a really good job of kind of mid conversation stepping her vocab down to like not
Hmm.
try to sound confusing, recognizing that Rachal doesn't like that you're
Yeah,
using confusing words.
and still not and not coming off as condescending to Rachel.
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah. Kudos to both of these guys. Yeah, well done, Wildbow. Thank you for giving me these two characters and in this final scene together. I really liked it. Moving on to chapter 5. And as if my opinion of teacher couldn't get any lower, it's heading down. He's doing got some skullduggery going on, Andy. He goes into the hero's headquarters and he tries to break out Ingenue. What in the world? What's this guy doing?
yeah, well, players got to play.
So it would seem.
He's just trying to make hay while, everybody's looking the other way. But yeah, gosh, as if people couldn't just like chill out for a while. But as we've seen, there's a certain amount of, I don't want to say compulsion, but just this drive that once you're triggered and you have these shards, that it's almost, unless you're really trying to be on top of it, it's easy for these capes and villains to just kind of ride the wave, and
So
just
hang on a second. So let me interrupt you there real quick. So Tony, just because the entities are gone, the compulsion of the shards for conflict hasn't left.
You can make that assumption.
Okay, Andy, go ahead, continue.
well, and yeah, that's a good point. So we're watching this show right now about the oxy epidemic,
Mm-hmm.
and it talks about how even when you're not on the medication, your brain has been rewired. And so even if the entity isn't there anymore, if the cape that the entity was riding has been rewired enough, then it's almost, there's not a lot of difference. They've just become so indoctrinated or so used to that, their mind going that way, that they feel like that's just the way, that's who they are now.
Teacher has some grand plan, scheming, cooking, and that I'm presuming is going to take place during Ward. I'm going to guess, rightly or wrongly. And Ingenue has some role to play here. Forgive me, Tony. What was Ingenue's power? What did I miss?
I I don't remember
Did we ever get
exactly.
did we ever get an explanation? Or
You
was it
we
just
kind
inferred?
of you kind of do. So since we're at the end, I'll just read off of the wiki here.
Please.
Her power works by boosting one aspect of someone's power in exchange for dropping proficiency in another. So there's more power at a loss of control or more control at a loss of range, which
Oh,
she is
okay.
able to choose. This has the unfortunate side effect of driving her partners homicidally insane after prolonged periods of use, and these thralls are noticeably off-kilter to those who know them. She can also change her personality to her target's ideal woman, which makes manipulating them easier. It's also possible she could see a person's abilities, like Chevalier could, if in a more detailed and specific way.
Okay. All right. Then that some of that does sound familiar. Maybe we did get some of that during the course of the story, and I'm just missing out on that. But teacher's got a plan for her, as I said, cleverly. Andy, he uses Lung as a distraction. He sends him on a mission so that I guess all the primary capes are occupied. And then that's when he and his team, with Satyr and one of his thralls, they go and break out Ingenue. Lung kills a sea merc's child. Andy, surprise.
Yeah, that was just kind of slipped in there, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, hold on now.
Gamer babies.
What?
Is there an Endbringer preschool out there somewhere that we don't
Oh,
know about? I
dude,
mean,
yeah,
what's going
yeah.
on? This is messed up.
Oh
Uh,
gosh, and did that description kind of sound like Eidolon? I mean,
Yes.
okay, yeah. So she was cloning Eidolon, wasn't she, Tone?
I think that was the what was being implied. I don't believe there's anything that like 100% confirms like everything, but that I think that's the most reasonable take. At least that's the
No
take that
word of God on it or anything like that.
none that I'm aware of.
Okay.
But my thought on it was that if I recall from Eidolon's interlude that I think he mentioned that he might have wanted a kid at some point.
Mm. Hmm.
And so, oh yeah, I guess now is the time we can talk about this. Andy, um, do you have any new thoughts about the Endbringers after reading this chapter?
that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that at all, but yeah, if they were the worthy opponents that were needed,
Hmm.
and then yeah, why are they do seem like they're dormant or there's not been any real activity, but
Yeah. What the heck?
yeah, I hadn't really thought about it. They
Well,
kind of slipped out of my mind, I think.
is there something worth mentioning? Something you can share now at this point regarding them, Tone?
Yeah, I mean that basically the weight of that of those words was that Eidolon made the Endbringers.
Right. Yeah, you
And
needed
so
worthy opponents. Yeah, yeah, we got that.
yeah. And so the additional inference is that what Eidolon's power like what he wants is usually like or what he needs is usually kind of what he gets. And if the Seamerg is an extension of that, like him wanting, may possibly wanting children could
Oh, holy
have been
crap.
a potential extension of those
Hmm.
desires.
Oh, boy. Huh. Okay, now boom. There my mind's going places there. Yeah. So was she helping satisfy that something that even though he's dead? Wait, nah, he's dead though, Tone.
Yeah,
So when did she start cooking up this baby?
I don't know.
It was after he was dead though. Because
Perhaps.
it was I remember okay during one of the fights when they I think it might have been when they were taking down the Yangban who were destroying that one community. She had something hidden, yeah, a glass tube hidden inside one of her weapon constructions. This is that, I'm guessing. You remember that,
Well,
Andy?
well, Eidolon was gone for a while. Why do you think that the Endbringers still continued
Hmm.
during the interactions with Scion post Eidolon?
So maybe it's a symbiotic relationship.
With who? Who's the
Well, what
host
if it's
then?
just a directive?
Well, yeah, so Eidolon needs worthy opponents, but the worthy opponents need Eidolon just as much.
Hmm.
So they're trying to recreate him.
Oh, is that it?
Maybe.
You got there half a step before me, Andy. Yeah. Huh. No, man. Maybe. Okay.
I don't know. Like,
It,
I'm spitballing with the rest of you here. Wait, I don't know. I'm just throwing out my ideas. I can't tell you
uh-huh.
how much is confirmed or denied, but that was my thinking around the time. So yeah,
Okay.
that's what I have. I cannot guarantee anything to you one way or another.
All right. All right, pal. Fair enough.
And I was just partying on what Tony was saying. I was just so.
Okay.
That's just
Interesting.
where I was going, but I
Very
don't obviously I
interesting.
don't know if that ends up being right or wrong.
Hmm.
We'll just have to see when you guys
Yeah.
read Ward.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Okay. Let me move on a little bit further toward the end of this chapter. So teacher meets with Marquis, and this is where he kind of starts going over his vision, I guess, for the future. Andy sounds pretty cauldron like with capes in charge and everybody. I think he said at one point, everybody gets what they want, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like he's just trying to, yeah, take over where Doctor Mother left off.
Hmm.
And it's why not? I mean, that system was working. Chunks of the infrastructure are there. A lot of the things that were trying to stop it are not there or are otherwise occupied. So it seems like it's something that could happen. Yeah.
They do worry for half a second whether or not teacher worries whether or not he restarted the cycle. This whole lung killing the Seamer's baby thing, and at least they had the good grace to be a little bit worried for half a second there. Teacher wants to get Amelia on his team as well. Marquis Tony isn't necessarily in favor of that, but decides he will put teacher's recommendation to Panacea and let her decide. I'm going to guess, you don't have to answer this if you can, but I'm going to guess that conversation that takes place in Ward.
Yeah, you can guess that.
Does it?
You can guess.
Senor. Come on. All right.
What?
Never mind, dude. Never mind. All right. So yeah,
I'm sure.
I'm gonna presume that whether or not Panacea appears in Ward, I don't know. I'm just gonna guess that it's looking to me like Teacher is going to be one of the primary characters in Ward, and there's going to be a lot of ancillary people we've heard of running around him, whether on his team or trying to stop him. So let's move on. Anything else to add to this chapter 5 there, Andy? Anything you want to touch on?
No, no, I think that covers it pretty well.
Cool. Okay. This is it. Interlude end. And it begins with a teenager meets and talks to a woman on a train. This nice elderly woman believes this teenager to be a boy, but it turns out, Andy, that this is not. We get pretty deep into the story that this is not your average teenage guy. This is actually Taylor Hebert.
Right. Yeah, I figured it had to be, and I actually had to go back and read it again to see where the woman kept referring to him
Right.
rather than her. And I was like, this is Taylor, right? I mean, why? And then I was, went off on a whole thing. It's like, well, what if they couldn't bring her back as a girl again, or they had to, the Panacea
Yeah.
stepped in it again. That poor girl.
Oh.
Wait,
boy.
Taylor was a guy, right? No?
No.
Oh, man. Well, I can't go back. Sorry.
Accidents happen again. Yeah, no. Yeah, no, we get this conversation between Taylor, this teenager and this lady as they're on a train ride heading to their destinations. We don't know obviously where Taylor's going. And then the story jumps to the Undersiders having to get together. Tony, and this was them discussing where things are right now, discussing whether or not they need to deal with Teacher, and then paying homage to the people who have passed.
Yeah. Um, this is where it becomes like, extra clear, right? About Brian.
Yeah.
So any lingering thoughts were put to rest there.
Hmm.
Never made it off the oil rig, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, kind of a bittersweet moment there. Andy, what did you think about how Imp was kind of symbolically including everybody there?
I don't know, wasn't sure how I got more hung up on like the way she was messing with people, like
The
calling cozy and um Parian's crew the needle
needle
points.
points.
Hero points.
But yeah, what were you thinking, Tony?
Oh no, I just I just thought it was sweet because I'm a big Taylor fan, so I
Hmm.
was just like, yeah, I just liked how Imp really is full sending the whole legacy thing, and
Hmm.
Yeah.
always making sure that they're remembered and acknowledged even in her own crew of people who, obviously would, but really reiterating that they're still kind of with us, all the time, but we should always like
Hmm.
keep them in our thoughts about like what we should be doing.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And Andy, it was good to see the crew, Perian, and Boyle, and Charlotte, and Forrest, and the kids. One last time here. Broadly speaking, some of this epilogue, some of it, Wildbow is tying up loose ends. Some of it is him probably setting the stage for the follow up in Ward. It's hard to know which is which until I guess you get in and start reading. But it was good to see these characters here and them finding out they're in a pretty good place, I guess you could say, for a group of young adult villains.
Yeah, this was good. I really liked the way the interaction happened, except as I said, Imp was still digging in a little bit, the
Hmm.
blade on people, but that's how she is. You can't expect her to change that. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that, now there are four of the Heartbreakers kids with Imp, and
Hmm.
or at least that she brought four. She might be hanging out with all of them. I can't tell. But yeah, they're knowing that it's a bad idea to leave them alone with people.
Dude, yeah. Oh god, that
Uh,
was the one. I forget the name of the which little girl who could do the suggestive commands and make
Floor, I think.
a floor. Yeah, yeah. Don't get on her bad side. My goodness. So let's not miss out on the fact that Tattletale brought Dinah over to be part of the discussion, and we find out later that was very deliberate on her part. And I do like the this was another instance where Imp flexes her vocabulary and calls her the kid Cassandra, and Tattletale's like, "What in the world? Where are you getting these references from?"
Yeah, that was pretty good. And it was interesting,
Yeah.
because she definitely didn't fit in with the rest of the group. I mean, she was the reason that Taylor did a lot of what she did, but it's still, kind of like one of these things doesn't quite belong.
Hmm.
But yeah, then it makes sense as it unfolds that they're trying to keep Dinah in the dark.
Yeah. So the story jumps back to the teenager, and she's in a mall, and she walks up. Taylor walks up and meets her mother, or the Earth Aleph version of her mother. Boy, this was about as awkward and as tricky as one would imagine. Right, Andy? Pretty solid writing, setting the situation, the emotional impact, and then finally the two of them seem to settle down a little bit, and they reach out and talk and have a good conversation.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, it seemed like if I was Taylor's shadow mom, when she mentioned private investigator, I would have been just like, I'm out.
Oh,
When,
yeah.
but given that all things that have happened, like even this world that was somewhat untouched still lost 500 million people.
Right.
I guess everybody's kind of thinking, yeah, there's going to be a lot of things that aren't what we'd call normal everyday behavior before all that happened. And so maybe she's cutting a little more slack than it would have been before the Golden Morning.
I'm making a note here because I'm going to have a question to ask you, Andy, when we get finished here. So they commiserate a little bit. Annette tells a little bit about herself, and she has two sons on this earth. And Taylor mentions that her mom is actually dead. And they talk about her dad and the relationship she had with her grandparents and so forth. So I was pretty happy with this. And then toward the end, Andy, she thinks she sees Alec in the crowd. Now, hold on to that. Don't reply to this because we're gonna end up coming back to this. I want to skip forward a little bit to the other side of the conversation where things jump back to the Undersiders. Tattletale and the rest of them are closing out the conversations, dismissing everyone, and they're talking about how they're going to handle Teacher, Andy. So again, something that might be dealt with in Ward, we would have to see going forward. But Rachel being Rachel, using her logics, like, hey, why don't we kick him down the elevator shaft before he becomes a problem?
Well, yeah, and Tattletale is just beside herself that Imp comes up with a better analogy that Rachel's able to understand.
Yes.
And that was priceless. I could just picture that. She's like, hold on now. I'm the one who's what? How
Mm-hmm.
is oh man. So yeah, that was pretty good. But yeah, Rachel's got a point. Uh if you can get to the problem before it's full blossom, then you're in better shape. Again, I'll get into this in my little portion at the end a little bit more, but the question is Teacher the instigator or is he the puppet?
Mm-hmm.
Are there multiple levels of strings here pulling people? And is taking
Mhm.
care of Teacher going to be good enough? But they're kind of talking about that by the fact that Teacher's blocking the door. So yeah, just try to basically cut the cable and have the
Yeah.
whole elevator drop.
Hey, Tony, let me ask you this. I can't remember. Were you were you done with Worm before Ward came out?
Yes.
Okay. So then in that context, were you happy with where Wildbow left the Undersiders? Were you satisfied with this point?
I mean, yeah, I was very satisfied with just the story as a whole. I felt, I mean, after reading through all of Worm, there was that empty feeling of, man, I don't have
Mm-hmm.
one more chapter to go through right now of that kind of excitement, just as you would with any good story.
Sure.
But
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, with Lisa in
yeah, go
charge and Rachel, understanding things a little more, and Imp trying to become a sophisticated villain, you were pretty. I mean, Imp and pardon me,
yeah.
Foil and Parian, you're pretty satisfied with where the characters were at this point.
Yeah, I really liked everybody's dynamics and everything. I did feel I guess I don't remember my exact feelings at the time with Foil and Tattletale. Like Foil because like Foil still really dislikes Tattletale,
Well, there is that.
and I'm not sh I guess I'll just leave it at that. That part felt a little bit. I mean, it was interesting, but like, I don't think at the time he even confirmed there was necessarily going to be a sequel because I think we didn't get any of the snippet chapters till after he finished Pact.
Oh, okay.
So his
So
second
it was
his second
sometime.
story finished, and then after that, then we started getting the those little prologue chapters, the glowworm, I think they were called at the time.
Okay. All right. So thanks for that. I wanted to Let me scooch on down ahead, make sure I'm not mentioning anything. So, in the context of this last section, Andy, where Taylor and her dad resolve or deciding what they're going to do, they're going to go have a bite to eat. Taylor decides that no, that couldn't have been Alec, and they're just going to go off and have a nice day together. So, Andy, is Taylor alive?
Yes.
What do you think happened to her after this?
Well, she kind of touched on it when she was talking earlier, and she said, I was given a choice of living or dying. I chose dying, and now I'm alive. So I'm guessing that Contessa, with her ability to win,
Mm-hmm.
is able to figure out a scenario whereby she can stop Kepri without actually killing Taylor. And then she got her somewhere that she could be healed. Now it's interesting that Taylor has these two dents in her forehead. Not sure what that's about. Maybe Contessa used a certain kind of bullet, or maybe it's something to keep Kepri from coming back, disabling the powers. But yeah, Taylor's alive, but Kepri is either dead or
Dormant.
dormant. Yeah, that's a good word.
And yeah, to string that back to the fact that Tattletale made some allusions to taking care of things on that front when Imp had brought up Taylor.
Mm.
So, so you think that she is on Earth Aleph? You think she traveled through?
Yeah, yeah. It talks about her going through some portal and then shutting it down, or it was shut down.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So yeah, I think it's there. But yeah, to your
So,
point
so
earlier,
go ahead. Sorry, pal. Go ahead.
they didn't want Dinah to know that. So why keep Dinah in the dark if it wasn't really Taylor with the dormant Kepri?
We never got confirmation that her father was dead, did we?
No, I don't remember. She just didn't want to know, kind of like with
Mm-hmm.
Gru.
So the house was obliterated. So how could she travel to Earth Aleph with her dad if we think that her dad is dead?
Hmm.
Okay, now Tony, I'm gonna let you chime in here. I'm trying to think back because when I first finished this, I started having kind of an existential crisis about that, whether or not she was dead, and you just kind of laughed at me, didn't you, Tone? Did you feed
Yeah,
into that?
I laughed hysterically. It was great. Because I got to pass on the pain that Wildbow passed on to the fans as well. Because Wildbow also likes to appear on Reddit sometimes, and there was a interesting thread discussing the theories of the end. And Wildbow, of course, decides to chime in and give validation to one person's theory
Mm-hmm.
that Taylor is in a coma.
Uh-huh.
Oh goodness.
That sound you hear, ladies and
Like,
gentlemen, is the sound of Andy's brain going up in a nuclear fire.
like, of course, like she may have the power to win, but can you really do surgery with a handgun? Come on, guys. Brain surgery with a handgun, and I'm like, man. Listen, but he's trolling. I think
Yeah.
it's meant to be ambiguous, or at least I think that's his general intention.
Mhm.
So, I think you're free to rationalize it however you please.
And see, this is where I got supremely frustrated because, again, as you know, a bit of a superhero normie when it comes to that genre, I'm looking for a solid end. Give me the ending. No, you can't just leave it ambiguous like this. No, I need to know, is she dead or alive? How is she, so
Well, it fits the theme because, like,
yeah.
have you read the graphic novel Watchmen?
Well, I
Yes.
haven't actually read it, but I watched the
The movie,
director's
right?
cut. Yeah, the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you have a story like this where the hero is morally gray, it's fitting to have
Mm,
a more kind of gray ending because, like, yeah, if you're watching, the Avengers or whatever, yeah, you want the good guys to win. That's the formula.
that's a fair, you know what? That's painting it pretty fair when it comes to me. I guess I'm liking the Avenger ending where the good guys, where it's all tied up in a neat bow as opposed to,
Yeah, you lost Tony Stark, whatever, but
yeah,
everybody's alive and
yeah, exactly.
back and
Okay. Andy, what do you, let's since we've already started, let's go ahead and move on to getting your impressions of this arc, Andy, and expound more on this. Is she or isn't she dead or in a coma kind of thing? What do you think there, bud?
I really like the arc. I think he did a great job tying up the loose ends while, like you said, laying the groundwork for a sequel. Plenty of things there to get people scratching their heads. Oh, what did that mean? Well,
Mm-hmm.
why was that comment there? There's the one comment where Tattletale's looking at the screens and she sees Valkyrie on one of them who's kind of checking out this guy changing into clothes. It's like, who's this guy? Why is she checking him out? Why is it important that,
Right.
and that touches on a little bit how she's trying to be more like her chronological age. She's trying to Valkyrie's trying to move forward a little bit. But as far as Taylor being in a coma or being alive or being dead, I can't think of the darn movie, but there was a movie back in the 80s, I think, where, oh heck, what was the actor's name from no, Shawshank Redemption?
Who? Tim Robbins?
Tim Robbins. Yeah, he
Hmm.
was in a movie where he played a veteran
Oh, Jacob's
who
Ladder.
Jacob's Ladder,
Love that
exactly.
movie.
That was a brilliant movie. But in
Yes.
that one, he is, you find out later,
Hmm.
sorry for the spoiler, movie's
Spoiler alert.
40.
Recommend the movie, folks. If you don't want to hear it, the spoiler, turn off for the
I
next couple of
I
minutes.
have
But
not seen this movie.
um, oh boy, Tony, we need to watch this one. But
I won't bring it up then. But anyway, the idea is that usually in a story when an author is having an ambiguous situation like this, there are clues to the audience of what's going on.
mm-hmm,
Think of like the miasma arc,
mm-hmm.
or that portion of that arc where Taylor was getting clues that stuff wasn't
What it
like she
seemed, yeah,
right, and so
No
usually
swearing.
yeah.
exactly, yeah,
Mhm.
and so there's nothing like this in that arc. Taylor didn't see anything weird out the window, or it's all pretty linear. There's no off kilter stuff, so that makes me think it's actually happening rather than something that's going on in a person's head while they're in a coma.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I feel like there are some layers there, like if I recall, they were really careful to like between like Lisa, Dinah, and everybody to not ever affirm one way or another
Hmm.
that
Mm,
Taylor is in fact dead. Like they're honoring her that she's not there, just as the people who are confirmed dead. But this, like in my head canon, they're like if I want to believe that Taylor is alive, that there could be very strict rules on people privy to that knowledge of basically always just making people think that she's gone and not coming back.
mm,
Because that people like definitely want like very powerful people definitely want revenge, right? And
right.
it would be very bad, I think, if people knew that there was even a snowball's chance that a Capri could never come back, even if it was, permanently sealed one way or another. That's at least that was my headcanon at the time.
Hmm.
Right now, I actually don't even really, I don't know. I think I've I've moved on from having a strong feeling one way or another at this point from having read Ward as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Might have changed
yeah.
your perspective on the situation here, huh?
I don't know if Ward necessarily changed my perspective on that question in particular, but I think the one thing I could say is that Ward is a different type of story than Worm.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. You said that War, is it a direct sequel, Tony?
Well, yeah, no, not a direct sequel in the sense that the protagonist is the same. Like
Okay.
I'll confirm that Taylor is not the protagonist.
Okay.
And
All right. But there's enough carryover. I mean, enough characters. And the world is the same and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah.
you will see, yeah, you will see familiar characters in
Okay.
Ward.
Fair enough. Okay. All right. With that out of the way, we're going to move on to something different. We're not going to do key character of the arc. Tony, why don't you handle this?
All right. Well, I guess based on how this story is gone and the epilogues, I guess we'll ask instead where Andy thinks this story might go and continue from. I'm really curious to see if you might be even be able to cold guess the protagonist for the next story. I'll be really impressed if you do.
Well, I'm not going based on like in-depth analysis or anything like that. I'm going off of Tony. I'm going off of things you've said.
Good, good.
I'm gonna say
I'll
it's
give it some clues.
I'm gonna say it's Contessa.
Oh, it's an interesting guess. I like that. Why do you think Contessa would be
Well,
a protagonist?
to get back to the idea of kind of these archetypes or whatever, the way Fairy Queen classified people as, the Queen Administrator or the Shepherd or that kind of thing. Contessa is like the ultimate victor. And so, one of the best ways to avoid being the painting the target on your back, the best way to win is to let everybody else kind of duke it out, hit each other, pit people against each other. And so it's like in chess, you don't just bring the queen right out and try to go and take the other king with your queen. You push all your pieces together to eventually make a path to victory. And so,
Unless you're scholars mating somewhere.
right. Yeah,
Sorry.
no,
The exception of cheese. Then yeah.
yeah, no, I've gotten yeah, four move checkmated way too often. So I hate to admit that, thinking of myself as an intellectual, but I did finally prevent my best friend from doing that to me every time we played. Um but yeah, so I'm guessing that or my prediction is that Contessa will be the man behind the curtain or the woman behind the curtain in this case, and just getting teacher or whoever to do stuff and draw all the fire and the flak, and then keep trying to move things to what she sees as the victory.
Interesting. Okay. All right. I will not unless you want me to tell you if you're right or wrong. I'll leave that liberty up to you. I don't mind actually telling you if you're right or wrong.
I'd like to know.
You're not correct at all.
Dang.
Good guess. I might have gone there.
Yeah. How about you, Keith? What do you?
I can't answer that because I've kind of spoiled myself for parts
Oh, you do know.
Ward.
Oh, the next.
I'm
Okay.
pretty sure because of I've looked at a lot of fan art and stuff, and some of it
Mm,
has bled over to Ward, and I haven't avoided it. So I'm pretty sure I'm like 90% sure who the protagonist is for Ward.
okay.
Andy, I could tell you if I could put my guess out there if you want to know.
Well, I'm fine either way. If you think it would, make the episode better, then by all means.
Well, I know we got a lot of our listeners listen to or have already read Ward and are encouraging us to go to do it. So I'm going to presume this is not a spoiler, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to go ahead and say I'm pretty sure that the protagonist for Ward is Glory Girl. Is that right, Tony?
Yes,
Yes.
that is correct.
Okay. All right.
Wow.
So how she gets back there and whatnot is a whole nother. I don't know how that comes about, but
Well, if at the end of Arc 30, the last chapter,
right,
you Capri brought
two
them
of them together.
together.
Right. That's right. I even pointed that out, didn't I?
Yeah,
Yes. And so I'm going to presume that's where she heals her sister and sets her off on that path.
correct.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
All right.
So yeah,
So
Victoria, aka formerly known as Glory Girl, will be your star of the next story of Parahumans.
so something to look forward to, Bubba, if you decide you want to read it, if you want to get there. So.
All right.
All right. Well, that is it, folks. We're
Well, I had
done.
a couple more
Oh, you got some points, please. Oh, more
predictions
predictions.
here.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
pal. Forgive me.
Yeah, we weren't done.
Oh,
If you're done,
oh God!
I mean,
Please, just let
you can.
me just step
I'll
off
talk to.
here.
I'll just talk to Andy.
No, sit the old man down in the corner here. I'm just gonna be quiet. No, go ahead, Tony. Andy, please go ahead. You guys continue.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Tune into Tony's podcast next time where Keith joins us as a special guest.
What
So
you got? Go ahead.
I'm going to predict that Dragon and Defiant do have some kind of offspring,
Okay.
Ooh,
and that is going to show up in Ward.
that's cool. Okay.
Hmm.
All right.
And as we touched on, because the term ward is intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That can mean somebody like who's a ward of the state. They're being protected in some way, but it can also be like in magical terms, it's some kind of seal that prevents things from getting out or bad things from happening. And so in the idea that the calibration folks are gone, then Ward might have something to do with these bad triggers and the fact that there's nothing to prevent the trigger event from harming the host. So that's what I'm guessing the term Ward is going to come in.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
I would never in a million years gone there.
Wildbow. Yeah, well, Wildbow loves well, obviously all of his works are forward titles, and he loves to have multiple entendres. Even if you've noticed in Worm, like aside from the very funny and direct jokey names, like Leet and Uber and Leet and
Yeah.
Right.
Scrub and Skid
Yeah.
Mark, some of the bangers. There's also things like really deep, really interesting names for a lot of the characters, like some of the biblical, mythological, Seamer, Leviathan, all the Endbringers. Even things like as that seem so simple, like teacher can have a really interesting way of looking at like multiple like layered meanings behind a lot of the names. And a lot of characters have these names, whether intentionally or unintentionally, that can be looked at in a lot of ways. And like, yeah, examining Ward that way, it's really spot on with
Wow.
how you can maybe look at it. Maybe not to the extent of what the story will be, but yes. And also, of course, remembering that the wards in the story were the former hero group, and then now the
Right.
Protectorate also renamed to Wardens.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
like
Oh.
lots of ties to a lot of different things there.
Yeah. Interesting.
All right.
Um,
Any more predictions, Andy?
Yeah, just the last one I wanted to touch on, and that
Yeah.
is that I think Imp is going to be taken over by the Heartbroken in some way. She's trying to go this certain way, but I think something's going to go wrong, and the Heartbroken are going to end up manipulating her, and
Wow.
having something bad happen there. So that's
Ooh.
my other
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Let's like try to withhold my questioning for you as even though I know what's going to happen, but I want to ask some more clarify like
Sure.
what in that chapter gave you the impression that the heartbroken would look at Imp that way, and that despite their interactions, like, with a kind of feeling like a dysfunctional family,
Hmm.
that
Right.
would lead you to that.
Well, so I guess I got hooked a little bit on when Tattletale and Imp were joking around, and Tattletale said, "I'll tell the Heartbroken that you were up here eating
Hmm.
cupcakes while they had to sit downstairs waiting for you." And Nymph was like, "No, no, not even, don't." And so it gave me an impression that Imp knows that there's a little bit of instability here, or there's a little bit of concern. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into that. And then the other thing is just that, with all the messed up stuff that the Heartbroken must have seen, and you've kind of got 9 against 1, if you will, if it comes down to those kind of like ganging up, if you will, or trying to seek for dominance in the
Hmm.
group. And that's, we touched on it a number of times that these people who were triggered early and went through all this messed up stuff at a young age are less mature than their chronological age. You could have just kind of this like toddler rage happening where the heartbroken all, say, "Oh, I'm so sick of this. Let's just get her," and then they all just come up with a plan and like dogpile basically.
Okay.
Boy, that
That's
would be
fair.
awful.
But
Yeah.
I would I would also present though that while that is true for a lot of characters that we've seen that are really powerful, they also did lack nurturing. You have
Mm,
characters like Vista who also triggered early, but still had family and support.
Uh-huh.
Kind of still turn out okay. You have a
right.
number of other young capes, Aiden, uh, like people who were also under the Undersiders wing that are kind of coming out okay. But I think it's more that when they're kind of left to their own devices, like even like Rachel did, like
I was
Rachel
just about to say that.
left
Yeah.
alone, right? And that didn't turn out really great for her. But it was once she kind of had that
Mm,
sense of bonding eventually that you start to see the readjustments happening to
Hmm.
right.
where they maybe aren't as homicidal.
Gotcha. Okay, well that makes sense.
And so, yeah, like I say, exception because in yeah, you actually can maybe even see it with if you just look explicitly at the heartbroken and then also people who are under heartbreakers influence. If you look
Mm,
at Alec versus why am I drawing a blank on her? It's his sister who came to
Oh, Cherish.
Cherish, excuse, thank you. Cherish didn't really, she just went off on her own. Alec found
Yeah.
a group. And sister just wants to go and mess with Alec and ruin his life.
right.
And so it's like, but now the heartbroken, they're free from the bond and fear of their father, and they have somebody who kind of gets it and
Hmm.
who's taken them under their wing. And so even though they have these unbelievably terrifying powers and kind of sadistic
Yeah.
dispositions, they still aren't actively like one, they could be using their powers more aggressively on each other. Instead, they're just kind of pranking each other like siblings.
Hmm.
It makes me feel that I don't see that necessarily being a thing where they all would turn on it. It's possible that maybe one, gets a real bad experience or something, but like as a family, I would say that it's
So
less
Gotcha.
likely.
Imp is providing enough structure, you think, and expanding that to the Undersiders as a group. They're providing enough structure for the Heartbroken that maybe they might be not the Slaughterhouse Nine.
Yeah, they're not going to
Okay.
be the next coming of the nine as
Okay.
a group of kids.
All right.
They
Cool.
don't have a Jack Slash that's
Mm.
gonna take them unless you think that's the way that they're gonna happen. Like, oh, they find another person to manipulate and influence them. I think that's way more likely.
Well, this is one of those things where, kind of my classical education, I think kind of got messed up because, again, I was trying to think of, all right, what would Imp's archetype be?
Hmm.
And the way that she is able to make people forget her, but then is also trying to help people or force people to remember things. I got thinking of Mnemosyne, which was the Greek goddess of memory, and she had 9 children that were the muses,
Right.
and so I got off on this whole thing where it's like,
Mm.
all right, well, Greek tragedy, it could be the muses.
Gotcha.
No, that's fair. And
Yeah.
the story, and then your defense, yeah, the story
Yeah.
that
Gets me
does
going dark places,
does
man.
enjoy some tragic plot lines. Yeah, I feel you. You know what? I will now I'll accept your apprehension there.
I'm messed up now, man.
And here I am doing the opposite, trying to ease your thoughts. Like, maybe it's not going to be so bad.
It'll turn out okay.
The tables turning. Wow, what has Wildbow done to us?
Oh,
Oh
oh
goodness.
gosh. Yeah. So, okay. All right. Cool. Cool predictions. Anything else on that, Tony or Andy? Or are we cool?
I'm good.
Uh, what? So we talked a little bit about the broken triggers, and it's more or less obvious that it's going to be something that's going to come up in the
Hmm.
sequel. I'm curious on Andy's prediction on how you think that these are going to play out given the frequency and severity.
Wow.
Oh. Well, I mean, I'm guessing that uh you're going to get some really bad people who realize they don't aren't restricted by the Manton effect anymore. And so let's see what would happen. You'd have people.
Well, I mean, wow. Well, if it's about the triggers jumping and about
Well,
is it about
they're
the shards and what havoc they wreak now that they're not controlled, you know?
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Huh. Uh boy. Yeah, I'm not sure. Were you going someplace specific with the Manton limit
Well,
maybe
just
not being an issue?
no, so I'm guessing, yeah, I was thinking that you'd have people that learned they could, you know, exceed limits in really bad ways, and that you would have to maybe have to recruit people that would be just as bad to try to stop the other folks, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I follow. Huh.
But yeah, I hadn't really.
That
I
might be
just
a little
figured.
tough one there.
Yeah, I hadn't thought that far down that road. I don't think.
And then I guess last question,
Yeah, go ahead.
given given what you've seen about Teacher so far, and even with the warning from Marquis at the end, do you think Teacher is to be trusted?
No, I mean,
No way, no how.
yeah, that guy is bad news every day of the week and twice on Sunday. So
Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't trust him as far as anybody could throw him.
Mm-mm.
Well, some people could throw him pretty far, super
Yeah,
straight
well,
now.
yeah.
All right, as far as Dinah could throw him.
There you go.
Okay, yeah.
All right, cool. Anything else to add to that there, Tony? Are you cool?
No, I think that's a good place to end here.
Awesome. All right. Well, that was fun. Hopefully everybody got some entertainment out of Andy's predictions for where he thinks the story might go in Ward. So we shall see. So now is it safe for me to sign off, fellas?
Yes.
All right, cool. All right, everybody. Yeah, Tony, thank you, Bubba. We really appreciate you being here with me and Andy and helping guide the story, the last part of our journey here. Thanks, son. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you guys read it, enjoyed it. Love talking about it. So, pleasure was mine.
All right. And thanks to everyone for listening. We are really, really glad that those of you who started with us from the very beginning and saw it all the way through with us, we were really grateful for each and every one of you. We hope that you will join us for our final episode, which will be our roundtable discussion, as Andy pointed out early on, where Tony will return and we will have author Daniel Radford join us from Australia. And we'll kick around several subjects and have a nice time wrapping up this wonderful world that Wildbow's created for us. So join us then. And until next time, take care.
Yeah. Thanks so much, everybody. This has been a wild ride. We were talking a little bit before we started recording about how expensive books are, and it's just amazing that something of this caliber is available for free, for reading, for enjoyment and entertainment, and that we're going a step beyond reading and analyzing it and having a great time with it. So there's lots of drawbacks with the internet, but this is definitely a shining example of some of the great stuff that can be done. And thank you, Wildbow. It's been a pleasure reading this and discussing it. Thanks for joining us in this podcast. We hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe. If not, thanks for stopping by anyway, and we'll hope you'll return. Music is by the band YYNOT from their self-titled debut CD. You can find more in the link down below. Catch you later.